Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank
Thanks
you.
for having
Great
us
to be
on.
back.
All right, let's cut right to it. So, Abe and Congressman Mills, thank you for being here. Obviously, we're seeing increased aggression from the Iran-backed Houthi rebels. I just want to get both of your reactions to the growing signs of escalation and, of course, the threat of full-out war. I'll start with you, Congressman Mills.
Well, Kim, as you said, there's not just a lack of leadership, but a crisis in leadership. We know that weakness invites aggression. We know that Joe Biden, as you alluded to under James Comer's new findings, Jason Smith's findings, as well as for Jim Jordan, that the entire Biden crime family is corrupt and compromised by the Chinese. When you look at China, Russia, Iran, and North Korea, who are all geopolitically aligned, you have to understand what that linkage means and what their overarching goal is. That goal is to impact the US dollar and try and eliminate it from the global currency while utilizing the feckless efforts of WHO, WEF, OPEC. But now look at how they can actually impact our supply and resource chain in total. And so this recent attack that the U.S. Destroyer Carney had to come and actually take down a couple of drones during this attack on the 3 shipping vessels, which the Houthis claim was a Israeli ship. They weren't even Israeli ships. They were Panamanian and Bahama flagged ships that are UK owned. But what they're trying to do is utilizing Bab el Mandeb, which is an area in 2011 that I patrolled on an anti-piracy operation that was going after the internationally recommended transit corridors. This is where a large amount of transit and supply chain comes in for the United States. We've already increased by 5 to 15% on what comes through the Panama Canal. Now, China and Iran and North Korea and the Yemeni Houthis, who are nothing more than Iranian-backed proxy militia, are targeting these transit corridors to try and hurt us in the supply chain, which would lead to further inflation and actually hurt the U.S. dollar and the U.S. consumer. So all of these efforts as a whole is just being done because they know that Joe Biden will do nothing to try and tackle the threats by the Chinese. He still considers them competitors as opposed to what they really are, which is adversaries. But I can tell you here and now, if you notice the Washington Post attack today on President Trump, what this is telling you is very clearly that not only does mainstream media, which I believe has a tremendous amount of influence by the Chinese and by the corrupt, but they're actually trying to go ahead and tell you what they've been trying to hide this whole time, which is that under President Trump, this wouldn't be a dictatorship style authoritarian rule. It would have been a more peaceful transfer. We wouldn't be seeing the war growing in Ukraine. We wouldn't be seeing the threats on Taiwan. We wouldn't be seeing ships attacking the IRGC. You wouldn't have seen the October 7th incident by Hamas in Israel. All of these things is because of the weakness which invites aggression, and that's because of this failed administration.
No, absolutely. And great to see you, Abe Hamadeh. So, obviously you have a history and a historical record on this, dealing with this group, as we all know from before. And this is something important, I think, to illuminate for the rest of the world and what's going on, who we're dealing with, and what is this Biden administration, doing about it.
Absolutely. And Congressman Mills is exactly right. The Houthis are trying to disrupt commerce, so it affects the global supply chain. But when I was actually out in Saudi Arabia with the U.S. Army Reserve from 2020 to 2021, I served under both President Trump and Joe Biden. And the moment Joe Biden took into office, Kimberly, 1 month into it, he removed the Houthis as a terrorist organization. And I think that's really important because we were still getting fired upon from the Houthi rebels in Saudi Arabia, in Riyadh, in Dammam, in Jeddah. So it really shows the foolishness of this administration's foreign policy. But it's kind of shocking right now to see that the Houthis have fired upon Israel. They've attempted to launch missile attacks towards Israel. Now they've targeted American warships and some of these civilian ships. And the Biden administration still has not redesignated the Houthis as a foreign terrorist organization.
Why is that? Because he's emboldening, evil essentially in our adversaries around the world. And it's important that he classify these groups, properly.
Right. And it has an ability to disrupt some of their financial services as well. But I think this is an appeasement toward Iran. The Houthis are they're Shia terrorists that are Iranian funded. All of these long range missile technology is coming from Iran. But this is going into showing you that what Iran is doing in the Middle East is much bigger than just Yemen. Our forces are coming under attack in Iraq, in Syria, and they're all done by these Iranian proxies. And they see this, Iran sees this as a low risk and a high reward type of feature because they can have some separation from it. But the Biden administration seems so bent on appeasing Iran, and it makes no sense right now. So, I think the world misses President Trump's leadership. When I was there, the Abraham Accords was signed. Right before I got there, he killed Qasem Soleimani, the Iranian Revolutionary Guard commander. So, the Biden administration's policies are completely backward. And what Congressman Mills said is exactly right. They're rushing right now while they still have Biden in office to try to take as much as they can.
All right. So, Congressman Mills, what legislation would you actually like to see coming out of the House to address the way that Biden is emboldening our evil adversaries around the world? I mean, we need to do something because there's a vacuum and absence of leadership. And that's why we're leaning in so heavily on Congress and really strong, stalwart members like yourself that have that geopolitical experience and intelligence and ability to understand what is necessary in the arena.
Well, I sit on the Foreign Affairs Committee, as you know, and also on the Armed Services Committee and also the Intelligence Special Operations. And one of the things that we've been trying to get the Senate to take up and also the Biden administration is, as Abe was talking about, an FTO, a foreign terrorist organization designation, looking at how we can actually utilize proper sanctioning from an economic perspective. Look, Iran has all this available cash as a result of the $6 billion that was going to be, unfrozen, which was fungible assets, which we've now had to go forward on, but also the amount of petroleum that they're actually exporting at this point. They are at record levels to export oil transfer, making revenue that they've never seen under the Trump administration or even the previous administration to that. This is helping to continue to fund these types of efforts. That's why you're seeing dozens and dozens of additional attacks in Iraq by Kataib Hezbollah, by Hashd al-Shabi, by other Iranian proxy-backed militias. That's why you're seeing, even after the elimination of the Quds Force commander, as Abe was talking about, Qasem Soleimani, you saw a vacuum filled by Hezbollah General Secretary Hassan Nasrallah, who has now rushed into the efforts, who is also threatening Israel and its way of life. And so we have to look at how we designate these targets, but we also have to start eliminating the economic advantages that they see. This is not the first time that we've seen the Houthis try and go ahead and attack commerce. We saw the same thing when they went after Saudi Aramco. We saw the same thing whenever the mid-range ballistic missiles were being sent to Iran, which is sent from Iran to the Houthis, which is a direct violation of Resolution 2231, which is JCPOA that President Trump took us out of, that failed nuclear agreement. And that happened under both UN secretaries, Ban Ki-moon and Gutierrez. So we have to take a very strong, very bold approach to how we actually designate these individuals: China, Russia, Iran, and North Korea, as well as for all of Iran's proxy militias, so that we can cut off the money supply and we can actually directly go after them from a diplomatic sanction and isolation, but also from a sanction of the banks and those in charge.
Abe, you're running for Congress. I just want to remind you. In Arizona's 8th congressional district. So talk about what bills you would introduce to restore an America First foreign policy. And your friend here, Congressman Mills, doing an outstanding job of really pushing these policies forward. And I want the people to know and understand that we need more people like Congressman Mills, and that's what we have in you.
And I think right now what we need most is President Trump back in the White House, as we can see how hamstrung Congress is when we have a feckless administration with the Biden administration in there. But for me, one of the biggest things I want to focus on, where foreign policy really ties to us domestically as well, Kimberly. I mean, here in Arizona, the border is completely open. We have 169 people who crossed the southern border just last year on the terror watch list. We have a lot of high interest targets as well. And China, I just saw a report today, China has so many people, thousands of people coming across our southern border. We don't know, they're unvetted. So I think all of this ties into the failures of the Biden administration in foreign policy realm, but it's really affecting us here at home as well. So something that we have to focus on when President Trump gets back in is securing the border with that wall, but also what I called on your show previously is revoking some of these visas, some of these student visas for when they're espousing pro-Hamas propaganda. And whether they're some of our allies who train with us on our military bases, which, we have thousands of them who do that as well, and they put some of our soldiers at risk, like what happened in the Pensacola terrorist attack in 2019. Right. I think we need to do a much better job at vetting some of these people coming across our into our country, and especially when so much of the heightened tension in the Middle East can have a radicalizing effect on some of these people. So we have to start getting tough, and we need an America first foreign policy. And I think President Trump, the best benefit we have for him running again is that we already know what he did and what he accomplished. Peace around the world. He made the United States energy independent, and all of that ties into a sound foreign policy and sound domestic policy.
You're absolutely right. I think it's imperative. Congressman Mills, meanwhile, there is more evidence of payments, we follow the money, from Hunter's shady business entities to Joe Biden. What can you tell us, and where do you stand on impeachment in the House?
Well, as you know, I've already co-sponsored the impeachment articles that went forward months and months ago. I thought that there was enough circumstantial evidence for us to have gone through with the inquiry to begin with and start getting the necessary depositions in place. I know there was about a month of kind of delay as a result of us trying to do a change in leadership and actually get someone in the House who understands what's going on. But I'm fully in support of impeaching Joe Biden for the crimes that he's actually committed. If you watch not just the recent findings where there was a monthly stipend that was going forward, but let's go ahead and connect some of the earlier statements that had come out where a $400,000 transfer went to Hunter Biden, of which then a $40,000 check comes out. Sounds like 10% for the big guy. And so when you look at all of these and you look at Jim Biden's bank transfers, when you look at the wire fee that was going directly to Joe Biden's house as its actual address for origin, all of these things paint a very grim picture when you think about how much money has been cycling through the Biden crime family from countries like not just China, but Ukraine and Romania and many, many others who are not exactly a partnered relationship or diplomatic tie to the United States. And so this is a clear pay for play, in my opinion. This has been a compromise for the Biden administration since he came in, Hunter, Jim, the entire family. But I think that's also what has led to not only just the open borders, but the soft policies that he has on our adversaries, such as China. The fact that he's allowed them to go ahead and target the US dollar to lose confidence by developing nations in our valuations. The fact that he continues not to try and build an energy security platform here at home. The fact that he continues to send money abroad into these quagmire warfare that China wants him involved in while ignoring our southern border, as Abe talked about. All of this ties into the fact that he is corrupt and compromised. And this latest finding by Chairman James Comer and Chairman Jason Smith and Jim Jordan just alludes to what should have been happening 6 to 8 months ago, which is the impeachment of Biden, the impeachment of Mayorkas, and my articles of impeachment against Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin for the Afghan botched withdrawal.
Abe, you're running for Congress, as we mentioned, and this is amid all this Biden chaos and the corruption. I mean, blatant corruption with factual evidence to support it, okay? This isn't political speculation. This isn't a partisan issue. These are facts. What sort of ally, in the midst of all this, do you truly hope to be to Congressman Mills and the other MAGA patriots in Washington?
Well, I couldn't find anything I disagreed with Congressman Mills. I think it's really lost with Secretary Lloyd Austin. I mean, when President Biden took office, one of the first orders Lloyd Austin did while I was deployed in Saudi Arabia, he put a stand down order making all of us take training on far right wing extremism and finding out the warning signs of white supremacists. It was very bizarre, especially when we're getting incoming missiles from the Houthis. It just shows you how backwards this administration really is. So, the Mayorkas impeachment, I'm shocked that we have not impeached him. I think it would send a strong message to the administration that Congress, the House of Representatives, will be a strong check on this administration. But unfortunately, right now, you have a lot of weak-kneed Republicans who don't seem to want to get along. And I think we need both wings of the party in order to make America great again. So, it's very unusual what's happening. The Democrats seem really in lockstep. And I think what needs to happen is this America First Republicans need to unite, especially, and that's why I'm looking forward to President Trump taking back office, because with him at the helm, I think it's going to do a real good job at uniting the caucus back together, because some of all these policies, Kimberly, they're really simple. It's common sense. We're not asking, we're asking to secure the border, right? The Democrats have to unpretzel themselves trying to talk about how the border is not open, yet we see 8 million people coming across. It's hurting cities like New York and Chicago, and you're having backlash with them. So our policies are actually are the right policies. Unfortunately, the mainstream media acts as a propaganda arm of the Biden administration. So it's something we have to constantly combat, but that's what we need Republicans to be united more than ever behind our America First policies.
I agree. And last question to you both. I'll begin with you, Congressman Mills. What's your message, to the American people that are watching, listening at home about what's truly at stake in 2024? I mean, we're 1 year out.
Well, when we first became the United States of America under our constitutional republic, which is designated in Article 4, Section 4, when they came outside, I remember that there was a woman who had asked and said, "What are we? Are we a monarch? Are we a democracy? Are we a," she said, and the response was, "We're a republic so long as we can keep it." President Reagan followed a very similar sentiment, which says that we're always one generation away from losing our freedoms, liberties, and rights. And that's exactly where we are right now. We knew that what the stakes were in 2020 and how high they were. And we're seeing now the cascading effects as we fall apart on the world stage, as the dollar valuation starts to drop, as quality of living becomes untenable, as housing affordability and availability becomes almost an obsolete thing, the American dream fading away, our borders being overrun, our military, our schools, our universities being succumb to wokeism, and our corporations for ESG and military for DEI and schools for CRT. All of these things were such a catalyst to bring us to where we are right now, which is falling apart and losing our American spirit. 2024 is truly our last ditch effort. And I think that while other people can say, well, there's other candidates that may not have the baggage, think about why President Trump has this quote unquote baggage. It's because they saw what he was capable of. It's because he couldn't be bought, couldn't be corrupted. And the swamp knew that. So they took as many attempts as they can. They tried to launch multiple indictments. They tried to go after sham impeachment hearings. They've tried to go after the family. And you know all too well about this, Kimberly. But the bottom line is that we need a uniter in office who is not scared of either wing of this party or any other corrupt swamp creature that's out there. We need someone who doesn't have a re-election looming over their head, who can make the bold course corrections to get us back on track. And he's the only one who has that ability to do so, who can't be bought and corrupted, who has proven himself in foreign policy, who understands how to build our economy. Just ask yourself the same thing Reagan asked when he was running for re-election. Are you better now than you were 4 years ago? If the answer is no, then the only solution is to bring President Trump back in office and give us a bigger House majority and Senate so that we can actually get policies codified to where they're not executive orders, but they're law of the land, and we can continue to live under that free statute.
Amen to that. And the strength and the measure of the man. You've been able to enjoy a very good and close relationship, with President Trump. And I think what an asset he is. And combined with a strong, robust, Congress that puts America first, I mean, the sky's the limit. All right, Abe, it's the same question, to you. What's on the line? What's at stake here? What do you want to say? What's your message to the American people about 2024?
Well, I'm not being hyperbolic, but America itself is at stake. My family came here from places like Syria and Venezuela, so I'm really familiar with how quickly these countries can fall and transform into a Marxist revolution. And I think that's exactly what's going on right now. This has been decades in the making. Ronald Reagan warned us about this in his Time for Choosing speech back in 1964. And it's all happening so suddenly because I feel as if they've activated their army. I mean, you're seeing some of these students coming out of these universities totally brainwashed to hate our country. How can we expect to invest in the future of this nation if we have the future of the leaders tomorrow are espousing this type of propaganda? So, I think there's so much more at stake right now, and everybody is watching, and I think everybody is tense. It's because I think everybody deep down knows what's at stake next November. And,
Sure.
Believe me, this time last year, Kimberly, President Trump wasn't even indicted. His first indictment came in March. Look at what an ambush they've done to us. So it's only going to get worse. The police state powers is going to increase. And it's reminiscent of these banana republics, like where my parents came from. So I know what's at stake. And if the flame of freedom is extinguished in the United States, it may be extinguished forever. And that's why we got to fight like hell for the America First values and fight like hell for what made our country great. And President Trump is going to be our nominee. And I'm looking forward to, after Iowa, or hopefully before, we have the other presidential candidates unite behind President Trump, and let's get the job done. Defeat Biden or Gavin Newsom or whoever ends up being the Democrat nominee, because what they represent is Marxism. And what the Republican Party right now under President Trump represents is freedom and opportunity. And that's what we're wanting to return to.
Well, good. I look forward to the day when the two of you will be working side by side. I like our odds. It is truly always such a pleasure. And also, God bless you both for your service to this country and continued focus and dedication and intention to serve this country and keep America really an America First country. And it is so important. And foreign policy and national security affect everything else, the economy and whatnot. So
That's right.
let's stay on this. We're going to continue to follow up with both of you. It was a pleasure. And I thank you for your time tonight.
Thanks, Kimberly.
All right. God bless.